Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. Okay, finish my sentence. You ready? The only constant is
Change.
There we go. There you go. We met each other in that moment, didn't we? It is so important to be reminded, that we grasp and clasp at what is. We want to keep what is. We don't want the change that's coming. It's so important to realize that often when the change comes, this is a great opportunity. But instead, at first, and I know I have struggled with this all my life, when change comes, I either feel insecure, that I don't have the tools for the change, or I might ask, why me? I don't know if you can relate to that question, why me, Lord? Or maybe we want to control what the change is bringing, or perhaps we're just so darn comfortable with what is familiar. Anybody relate to any of this?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So the whole point of the message this morning, which is good for all of us, all of the time, is that every change brings opportunity. Not just the ones that we want. And not only the changes that maybe come and we're, okay, I can live with that change, but the changes that bring the deep answers and questions and the changes that make everything shift for us. Whether it's the death of a loved one, whether it's the birth of new life in family, whether it's health changes, there's just so much change all the time. Our friend Joel was talking about such a shift in our consciousness in the world today, of so much violence and so much hatred, and just such a quick, tempered, easily triggered, tempered society. And this is a change, although we did in the riots of the 60s in Detroit and around the world with the change in our focus as a culture. We just have these uprisings. Right now we're in the midst of a very difficult change. And change can be so hard. Emanuel Swedenborg, my favorite theology that he offers us is that everything sometimes must fall apart so that the Lord can put it back together better than it was before. That's my number one favorite theological point of our faith. Things must, not sometimes okay, must fall apart so that reordering can take place and things get better. In the 1950s in New York, the slum district was destroyed because the Center for Performing Arts was built in that site. But even though you can say to yourself, oh, the slum district, okay, we can get rid of that, that change caused an uprooting of many families. People who grew up in the slum district, their children played in the streets. Their family members lived and died there. This was where their memories, this was home in that slum district. And yes, it was in the long run, in the greater view, what was unsanitary and unsafe was taken away. And we brought this beautiful center for performing arts. But that change, imagine if that was your home and all of your childhood memories. And that's where you played with your best buddy in the street and where your family loved you and where you loved them. And it was torn up and they were relocated and their roots were no more there. Bless you.
Thank you.
Change can be hard, and it's hard for all of us. And now I'm going to shift us from the physical changes. I mean, we talk about, what about in Hawaii? Look at the homes and the businesses and the lives changed and what we see as destroyed. And we grieve with them and we pray for them. And we can relate. We don't know what our change brings. And sometimes change brings destruction. And even in destruction, opportunity lies waiting for us. And so now let's shift to the spiritual level. Sometimes we must be in a lost place. We must be in a lost place. Because, you may ask yourselves, why must we? Because our level of faith at any moment when we're lost is not adequate for our potential. Our faith level isn't adequate anymore for what our potential is that God sees for us. So that our faith as it is must die away. It must give way and take a different form in us. Does this remind you of a butterfly? I hope so. Mm-hmm. What happens to the butterfly when it goes into the cocoon? When the actual caterpillar gets into a cocoon, what happens to that caterpillar?
Turns to goo.
What?
It grows and develops.
What before that?
It turns to goop.
It turns into goop and disintegrates.
Mm-hmm.
Completely. So much so in that cocoon that there is no differentiation of life. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
That it turns into goop. A gooey mess inside there. That's what I'm talking about, that lost place. We must go there because God knows our faith level isn't adequate anymore for our potential. And so something new must form in us, our faith. So we go through faith stages. And it's so important because, you know, when I think about my own life, I think about the people I have the privilege to listen to at the hospital, and as I journey with each one of you, and you go through the devastations and the joys of your life, it's so important to realize that we don't just have faith, and that's it. A lot of times people say, yeah, I have faith in God. I have faith. Okay, what's for dinner? Huh? I have faith. Okay, let's move on. No. Faith has stages, and it goes deeper, and sometimes we go into a lighter faith. But generally, the Lord is moving us through into deeper territory because God knows our potential. So if you're suffering, don't lose heart. Don't give up. And even at the physical level, if your body is wearing out, I feel that my body's wearing out a little bit these days. It's okay, because the stage that we're entering into has to have room for us to expand like the butterfly leaves its cocoon. There must be a stage. So Emanuel Swedenborg gives us, now this is a very general image that I offer you that he has written about. And there's three levels of heaven, like there are 3 stages in our faith. The first level, which is where Deanie wants to be in heaven, she said before she died, she says, I want to be in the first level, I want to be at the lower level where the feet are touching the ground. So if we image heaven in the form, just for the sake of our physical minds and physical eyes, if you can picture the human body as the shape of heaven, there's the lower level. And that level, according to Swedenborg, is the stage of our faith where we just want to obey the rules. We don't necessarily want to know about them. We just want somebody to tell us, okay, don't cross that line and you're okay. You're saying, okay.
Through the motions.
Kind of. But there's a happiness in following. Like if you have a supervisor at work, or you have a sergeant who's leading the troops, or if you have parents who, are leading the kids and they really care about them, you want to follow because you trust the leader. And that's a stage of faith. But then there's usually a crash. Because if your potential isn't just to follow, but it's to understand principles and to be in a little higher sense of understanding of what's going on. And then so Swedenborg says the next stage of faith is loving other people. So it's not just loving to follow for its own sake and obeying, which is a very important part of faith. Obeying what is right, what is loving. But now he says the next stage that we get into is loving the neighbor as yourself. Loving like the golden rule and understanding general principles of love. And then, if you're not content with that level, the highest heaven, the deepest faith is love toward God, love toward the Lord. And then when that kind of love is active and you're deep into that kind of faith, where you're doing things in your life because you love God. Not because God told us to in the Ten Commandments only. Not because you want to be good to your neighbor because you know that that's right. But now, that stage of faith is that you really love people and you love God. And all of those things follow in order. And the way that I can bring this right home to us is that last night I was invited to be a part of the Leukemia Lymphoma Society Man and Woman of the Year celebration. It was a fundraiser to help research for leukemia and lymphoma, and I was thinking of the Darlings, I was thinking of Mary, I was thinking of Stephanie, and all the people who have lived with and survived and struggled with cancer. So what this fundraiser was last night was a fundraiser and a celebration of life and hope, so that we can find cures with God's grace and mercy and understanding. We can help people better. And so what I saw in the room were people who were there and they were bidding on the auction items and stuff because other people were doing it. Because they knew, that's what you do. Mm-hmm. When you get to the point in life where you have a little extra money and you can help your neighbor, you go to these things and you help. So that's following. That's a kind of faith. But then we had people who were doing the right thing because they loved others. And you could see it in how they were interacting with the people who were survivors of cancer. And they were there because they knew somebody who had cancer. And they wanted to help because they love people. But guess when I saw the Lord? It's when the children got on the stage. Some of these children, one of them had an acute lymphoblastic leukemia from the youngest age, and at age 7 months he had a bone marrow transplant. And guess what? He had to have a second one after that. And they showed pictures of him in treatment. This is just this little 5-year-old who was on the stage, who has been in remission for years now. But when those children got on the stage, there was God. And everything changed in the room about why we were there and how we felt about being there. Mm-hmm. And I know that you get what I'm saying because I felt a shift in the room just now. Because you go to these things because it's right to do. And I did it in the name of all my friends and my spiritual family who are struggling with cancer right now. And I'm doing it for the future, for research. And I did it because it's the right thing to do. And I have a few extra dollars that I can, I want a massage. Mm-hmm.
Good for you.
I mean, that's for me. But I did it because all the money goes to help research. Okay, so all those things were inside of me as I'm sitting with Eleanor at the table, and then the little children come up on the stage. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you see and you hear what they go through, mm-hmm. and how they've made it with the love of the people that got them through, mm-hmm. that's where God lives. Now that's the third heaven, that's the deepest stage of faith that you can find, is the love you feel for God and for each other. That's the kind of faith that comes out of the cocoon. And as soon as you get there, then everything changes. With all the changes that are going on in the world today, there is only one anchor, only one that does not change, and that's the Lord. Never will the Lord change, because love is love forever. And if you follow that path, if you go there in your faith, if you let yourself feel and experience that kind of love, it actually helps you adjust to the changes that come. It helps you to adjust and to maneuver amidst the changes, and it maximizes your growth potential. If you can be in that kind of love with God for others and with others, and you can let yourself feel that faith, your changes will bring maximum growth and joy, and you will be most useful for His purposes.